So what exactly are Bitcoin faucet websites? And more importantly, how do they work? This is more than likely a question on your mind, especially if you've heard the phrase free Bitcoins from Bitcoin faucet websites thrown around. Now, a Bitcoin faucet website is basically a website that gives out free Bitcoins. That's completely true. But generally, they give you the free Bitcoin in return for doing a simple task for them, such as clicking an advert or solving a CAPTCHA. There are even some faucet sites that will give you the Bitcoin after just viewing the web page for a certain amount of time. Now, as well as Bitcoin faucets, there are other faucets for other cryptocurrencies such as Litecoin, Dogecoin, Ethereum and so on. But I'm only going to be focusing on the number one cryptocurrency, which is of course Bitcoin. Now, faucets give out tiny amounts of Bitcoin. The amount they give out depends on the value of Bitcoin at that moment in time. As you know, the value of Bitcoin is constantly fluctuating, so the payout of the Bitcoin faucets will fluctuate naturally. Typically, the payout per transaction on these Bitcoin faucet websites is just under 1,000 Satoshis. However, there are faucet sites out there that pay out considerably more than that. Let me just make it clear that faucets don't tend to pay out for every visit you make or every task you do on the site. As I mentioned earlier, whether it was type in your Bitcoin address, click an ad, solve a CAPTCHA or any other task, what they do is build up these small payments of about 1,000 Satoshis until you reach a predetermined payout level, at which time they'll send all the Bitcoins you've earned to your address. They do this to simply reduce mining fees. In fact, some Bitcoin faucets use immediate off-blockchain transactions, which have no fees at all, but that's very rare. Now, there are sites called Bitcoin faucet rotators. These do what it says on the tin. They rotate through a huge amount of Bitcoin faucets for you. And all you have to do is simply click the button on the rotator website. This essentially means you can visit way more sites than you could do by simply doing Google search after Google search and typing the URL for different faucets. Now, these Bitcoin faucet rotator websites earn money through a referral system for each website visited. The good thing about these Bitcoin faucet rotator websites is that they can prioritize faucets by their average payout level and will strictly visit sites if the time between each payout has been reached. But of course, each Bitcoin faucet rotator website runs by its own rules, as do the faucet websites. But the principle of how they work and how they pay out is exactly the same across the board. Now, let me go over how these Bitcoin faucet websites work as a business before moving on, because I think it will really help you in understanding how they work and so on when you're using them. So, the business model for these Bitcoin faucet websites is pretty simple. They focus on getting ad revenue from selling ad space on their websites. Then a portion of that revenue is paid out to users who visit the site, of course in Bitcoins. So the higher the payout for Bitcoin faucet sites, generally the more often they will want you to visit the site because they will need more visitors to meet their ad targets and make their faucet the most valuable and the most profitable Bitcoin faucet out there. So as I mentioned earlier, a time limit is imposed in between payouts of Bitcoin to users. The key reason this is done is to stop bots, human CAPTCHA solvers and avid users making repeated withdrawals and spamming the site. Now, there have been serious cases of this previously, so like I said, that's why the time limit's imposed. Now, as you know, well, I hope you do, Bitcoin transactions are irreversible, and many Bitcoin Faucet websites have become prime targets for hackers. So this is the key reason why these sites have really stepped up security to combat these hackers from stealing all their Bitcoins. Now, I just want to go over when we talked about Bitcoin Faucet rotators. You see that I mentioned the referral systems? So let me delve deeper into that for you now. So these referral systems are systems where existing users referring new users to that faucet are rewarded with a pro rata portion of the new user's earnings from the faucet. It really is a great way to earn more by simply referring others, and you can see how the earnings for these rotator websites can become quite lucrative. But of course, we're not charged as users to use either the rotators or the faucets, it's all free. Now, with the Bitcoin Faucet rotator websites, some have compared them to pyramid schemes. I thought you should know that, but I fail to agree. Simply because earnings do not just go to the top of the food chain of referrals. However, in terms of a legal standpoint, the exact legal status of Bitcoin Faucets and Bitcoin Faucet rotator websites is still very unclear, as with many things in the Bitcoin industry. But one thing is for sure, these sites are not illegal one bit.